as long as we make the show. We can be the best or we can be the worst. So we can be the best thing you ever heard. With the motor singing and the grandstands ringing, it's hard to put it all in words. But this is how we ride, this is how we do. Riding mud, sliding up higher in the groove. Don't give a damn about the cash we're spending. With the time we got, we choose to play it on the go, to stay out on the run. We all high, wild, and handsome. Ain't telling you what's right or wrong or what to choose. Hey, but this is how we do. This is how we do. Out on the dirt ovals we play, life in the bright lights with no shades. So letting her go, letting her rip, letting her fly, tossing her in sideways, living the life, letting her ride, eyesight winning to die. Cross her up on the cushion, crossing the line, cause some drama and some bullshit they didn't like. And if they don't like the move, then we're ready to fight. But this is how we ride, this is how we do. Riding mud, sliding up higher in the groove. Don't give a damn about the cash we're spending. With the time we got, we choose to play it on the go, to stay out on the run. We all high, wild, and handsome. Ain't telling you what's right or wrong or what to choose. Hey, but this is how we do. This is how we do. This is how we roll, this is how we do. It's not for everybody but the chosen few. And we pray, cause we know that they might not ever come back. But this is how we ride, this is how we do. Riding mud, sliding up higher in the groove. Don't give a damn about the cash we're spending. With the time we got, we choose to play it on the go, to stay out on the run. We all high, wild, and handsome. Ain't telling you what's right or wrong or what to choose. Hey, but this is how we do. This is how we do.
Sam, we get on him. We got
White flag is out. The 38th annual Alamo Knoxville National. Look at Danny to the bottom. Danny Lisowski goes by Sammy Swindell. Will he win the Alamo Knoxville Nationals? The crowd is on their feet. They're going to tear this place apart. Jim Swindell is in front. Danny Lisowski has won the 38th annual Alamo Knoxville
Jack
Nationals.
Hodgshield. Looks like Sammy had a problem. Jack Hodgshield got second, I believe.
Is
Way to
he
go,
ever
dude.
proud? There will not be one person in this crowd not happy for the dude. He has finally done it. The winningest driver in the history of the Marion County Fairgrounds has finally won
Hey,
the
Ralph.
Amico Knoxville Nationals.
Ralph, we need the oxygen again.
Oh, man, was
I'll
that
tell
not a great race, Tony?
There is no bigger fan in this world than Ralph Sheheen of Danny Lisowski.
He ripped on me earlier, but I'll tell you what, he's my good little buddy. Way to go, dude!
He's going to be up all night long signing autographs. And
Oh, what a great night for Danny the Dude Lisowski. His entire family here, his dad, George, his mom, Barbara, the entire grandstand is on their feet. They're all running out to the front straightaway. His wife, Chris, is here. There's Jimmy Carr. His mom and dad are here from Canada. Bobby Gerald is down.
The
Look at
Polish-
them all coming out.
Polish victory
The
lap.
Polish victory lap. Danny Lisowski taking a page from the late, great Alan Kulwicki.
Wow. Suppose he had that planned, or that's just something he just came up with. But all these years, maybe he said, I'm going to do this by winning Knoxville Nationals, turn this thing around.
The crowd on
Holy
their
cow.
feet for the dude. We're going to come back and talk to the winningest driver in the history of Knoxville Raceway, Danny Lasowski.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the call right there. When we said we were going to have Ralph Sheheen on the show, we got sent that clip by so many people. Of course, we're in the Knoxville region right now. But the guy who sent that actually is from Tennessee, funny enough. But that was on the TNN station, I do believe. I believe that was it that called? We have Ralph Sheheen here. That once again, that legendary clip. But we have Ralph Sheheen on the call today. We wanted to open the show with that. Was it TNN, the Nashville Network? How are you doing, first of all, Ralph? Sorry, I'm starstruck. Continue, sorry.
All good. No, I'm doing great. Thank you. And thanks for having me on. Yeah, that was on TNN back in the day, the Nashville Network. That was one of our early live broadcasts of the Knoxville Nationals. And that was a special night for sure for so many people. Obviously, Danny, but the entire crowd there in Knoxville. You know, we'd been waiting to see if and when Dude would finally win the Nationals, and all came together that night. And there we were doing it live, and definitely one of the highlights of my career.
Well, and TNN was interesting. I believe now it's the Paramount Network. I believe that's what TNN has moved into.
You know, it has morphed more times than I can remember, and I've lost count, to be honest with you. I know after TNN initially went away, it was bought by CBS, and it became a variety of different things. It was Versus, and then it was
Spike, maybe?
Spike, yeah, Spike was one. And it changed, like I say, it changed numerous times over the years as it was sold and resold. So I have lost count, don't even know where the DNA has landed today. But, yeah, the old TNN was fun, and it was special, and it was a unique time in broadcasting, that's for sure.
Well, the only reason I thought it was the Paramount Network is I did Wikipedia you today, which we can't trust Wikipedia, but it's pretty good. I didn't know you were from New York, first of all. That's interesting. But it does say that TNN is now the Paramount Network. That is apparently the fact of the scenario. But,
Okay.
yeah, you're out of New York originally. I didn't know that. Utica. So I'm assuming big block country is what you came up on?
Nope. I was born in Utica, but I was raised in California, so I grew up a sprint car kid.
Okay, raised on. Okay, so that had to be different. Being
Yeah, I was
from New York,
I was
but
11 months old when my folks moved from Utica, but all my aunts and uncles and cousins and all that still live in that area, so I'm very familiar with the region. Have spent a bunch of time there, but yeah, I was really raised in California, Northern California, Sacramento. So sprint cars, motorcycle racing, drag racing, those were the things that I really grew up on. I didn't get, heavily into stock cars or anything like that until I moved to Charlotte.
okay, interesting. Obviously TNN, the sprint car, I feel like you were a part of that era of, kind of, for instance, when people talk about dirt track racing today and how big late models are. I was quoted in one show and somebody's asked me, what do you think the difference is between sprint cars and late models? Because it is a pretty big difference of a crowd, almost compare it to Indy cars and NASCAR almost. It's pretty similar as far as how separate the fan bases are. I think it's a little closer than that, but it is different in its ways. But I do always say that late models are bigger, technically, dirt late models, that is, late model racing, but sprint cars are more mainstream. And I do think that that's attested to the TV coverage that they received in the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah, I could see that. I was part of it when it burst onto the national scene on television. Obviously, there were regions across the country that were huge for sprint car racing, Northern California being one, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all the regions where it was always big and had a huge following. And what I think happened was initially we hit the market with the Slick 50 Sprint Car World Series. If you remember that, you're probably too young for that. Yeah, out in Arizona, Manzanita the first year. That was the first ever, not just live of sprint car racing, 10 weeks in a row. But it was also the first time anything was done in the winter of any kind.
Mm.
And then the second year we went to Canyon Raceway, and then the third year NASCAR came on board with the Winter Heat Series that they did over in Tucson with the trucks and all that, and it morphed from there. And then from that, Knoxville became a big deal, and we started televising that live. And then they were on the hunt, man, and tracks were getting built. Charlotte built the dirt track here. Texas Motor Speedway built their dirt track. And before you knew it, we were doing a variety of sprint car races live throughout the course of the year. We were at Knoxville, Williams Grove, Eldora, Texas, Charlotte. We were going around the country doing these races live, and we're up in Fargo and places like that. I mean, it was awesome.
Bro,
but
and
I remember
go ahead.
that
Sorry.
first Slick 50 year was really big because up until then, everybody had heard about Keith Kaufman or Brent Kading, but they hadn't seen them. They had heard about Daniel Lasowski, but they hadn't seen them unless
they were from
went
that
to those
region.
regions.
Yeah.
Because those guys weren't running with the Outlaws. So, yeah, people had seen Steve and Sammy, right, and Blaney and guys like that, and Hawes, who were on the World of Outlaw Trail, but they didn't see Kading in Pennsylvania. They didn't see Kaufman in Indiana often, that sort of deal. So 10 Sundays in a row, we put those guys on TV, and everybody got to see how everyone stacked up, and it really took off. I mean, Danny will tell you, those 10 races are what made Danny Lasowski before winning Knoxville.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was in that off-season style area too, so everybody's kind of at home or snowed in or there's nothing else going on, football season, so it was probably the perfect timing, almost kind of like a Thursday Night Thunder timing in a way, how that worked for you,
It's exactly what it was. It's exactly what it was. We were on every Sunday at a specific time, and it clicked. There wasn't nowadays with all the streaming and everything that's going on, you can watch racing 24/7, 365 days out of the year. Back then, when the NASCAR season was over, that was it. Racing was done until February on TV. There wasn't anything else. You weren't seeing Chili Bowl, and you weren't seeing all this other stuff that you get now. You weren't seeing Snowball Derby and all that kind of stuff that carries you through the winter until you get to Speed Weeks and the Rolex comes around and Chili Bowl and, all that kind of stuff now. Supercross in Anaheim and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have that back then. So it's not really that far back, but a lot has changed since then. That was the early 90s. And, I guess it's 20-plus years or whatever it is, 30 years. But it really has changed quite a bit. So those 10 Sundays in a row were a really, really big must-see, must-watch TV experience. And, man, the people tuned in.
Didn't ESPN Speed World do some dirt track stuff, though? Like Ascot, Eldora? I think they did, didn't they? Or
yeah,
no?
but not during the same period of time. They did their stuff like during the summer.
Right.
They did stuff at Ventura and places like that. And, of course, Thursday Night Thunder was, from IRP, but it was pavement. But they did do some Thunder from Ventura and some other places. But, yeah, it was the time of year that we did it when nothing else was going on. If you were a race fan of any kind, that was the only kind of racing fix you were going to get. And we were running midgets and wing sprint cars on the same program. And, it was great. We had all the right racers, good coverage, great broadcasting crew. Pat Patterson really stuck his neck out on that. Was all his idea. He stuck his neck out on that, made it come together, and the guys at Slick 50 jumped on board, and it just took off.
Yeah, is that the guy behind Diamond P?
No, you can hear Pat on PRN doing NASCAR radio from the Major Cup weekends most weeks on their broadcast when PRN has the race. But no, Pat was not involved in that.
Okay.
Diamond P was a whole nother group out of Florida.
Okay.
I did a ton of work with them too. Pat owned a show called On Pit Road, and he was also the originator of TNN's Race Day.
Right, right. What was the progression there with broadcasting? So, like you said, you had the TNN, the Western Slick 50 series down there in Arizona. Manzanita, you said Peoria, which Peoria is Canyon. And then how did it originate or progress from then? Because it seemed like it got some wind, and then Speed Channel kind of got involved. I don't know if that's good or bad when I look back on TV, because I feel like, when sprint car racing was on TNN or was on a normal style channel, somebody could be tuning in to watch the basketball game at the top of the hour and there's sprint cars, whereas when Speed Channel came around, you kind of only, random people weren't going to the Speed Channel to watch another form of programming, and it was exposing the sport, if that makes any sense. How did that progression go from TNN to Speed Channel technically?
Well, first of all, TNN was gone by the time Speed Channel really got up and going. Speed Channel began life as Speed Vision.
Okay.
And it started Speed Vision and Outdoor Life started at the same time. They were both owned by Roger Warner, who's a business partner with me in Speed Sport 1, our television network that's out there.
Okay, so hold on. So Speed
Roger
Sport
started
is a lineage of Speed, technically? Speed Sport 1?
No, not really.
Okay.
It is in some ways, but not the way you're thinking. We'll get to that here in a sec. But Speed Vision was Roger's idea, as was Outdoor Life. He started them at the same time, started to grow them. And you have to understand, back then, everything was talked about in homes. So you had Speed Vision at the time, but just as it became Speed Channel when it switched over, they had 25 million homes. That's it. It's nothing today. Nothing. At its height, when Speed Channel, so Roger sold Speed Vision to Fox, and it became Speed Channel. When it became Speed Channel, it grew to 80 million homes, okay, which was a big number back then. ESPN at the time was 100 million homes. That was about as big as you could get on cable. So Speed Channel was right there. And the thing you have to remember, too, with TNN never had basketball or anything like that. TNN had three things: hunting and fishing shows, country music programming, and racing. That was it.
Well, I guess
That's
ESPN2 would have had some coverage, too. But, yeah, once again, back to
ESPN2 was never any bigger than Speed Channel was.
Well, programming-wise, it may have had different variations.
Home-wise, it wasn't any bigger.
Right. So then, hold on. I just want to keep on timeline. So TNN is this 90s era, and then where did dirt racing go in between this TNN era and this Speed Channel era? Where was it at? How did that progression happen?
When TNN went away, Speed Channel came along pretty quickly.
Okay.
So there wasn't a huge gap there. So it pretty much went to Speed Channel. There was some on ESPN with Thunder and that sort of thing like you're talking about, but not a ton. Speed Channel took a large chunk of it. They hung on to Knoxville and did a bunch of that stuff for years. We did a lot of stuff in Knoxville and the Outlaws in general. So there was a lot of it there. They got a lot of Lucas Oil programming came on board, ASCS stuff and different groups like that all moved over and got up on speed in different ways. And eventually Speed Channel became FS1.
Right.
And the reason why that happened is because Fox was seeing that their competitors, meaning NBC, CBS, ABC, they were all looking to get cable networks under their umbrella that they could go after big programming and use these cable channels as outlets for the things that they wouldn't put on the big major networks. So, for example, NBC wanted NBCSN up and running because they were going to go buy the Olympics for decades, which they did. They bought it for decades. And you're going to put gold medal women's gymnastics prime time on a Saturday night on NBC. But where are you going to put gold medal kayaking?
Right.
Well, you're not going to put that on NBC Live.
Yeah, it's not going to bring the numbers.
But you can put that over on NBCSN. See? And your sales department can still go out and sell an overall package to Pennzoil or Goodyear or Chevrolet or whoever, and they can say, hey, we're going to take you and we're going to spread you across, all of these Olympic events. Some are going to rate higher than others and so forth and so on, but you're going to get all this coverage. And so now it has gotten so varied that you'll see when the Olympics come from Italy here in another month in February on NBC, you'll see events on MSNBC, you'll see them on Peacock, you'll see them all over the board because that's what they do. They just spread it all around. That way you're getting more return on your investment as far as the billions of dollars you've spent to acquire the rights to the Olympics overall. Now you can put as much Olympic coverage out there and just gives your sales teams more stuff to sell and more opportunity to raise $20 to try to recoup your cash. So Fox wanted to go, they couldn't get the Olympics, that was already gone. They had some stuff with the NFL and some other major stick and ball sports. So you can put things like coaches shows and, talking head style shows where they break down what's going on in the leagues. You can put that over on FS1, which continues to drive eyeballs to the big events when they hit on the weekend, right? So that's why FS1 wanted, or Fox wanted FS1 up and running. And they also wanted to go and get the World Cup soccer, which they've done. In 2026 is a big year for the World Cup, obviously, here in North America.
Right.
So you see the finale, the final game, final match will be on Big Fox live, but opening round matches from, say, Curacao versus Bulgaria, a match that maybe none of us are really that interested in.
But you got to broadcast it to have that agreement, is what you're saying.
Well, not only do you have to broadcast it, but you want to broadcast it because it's something else you can sell. You've spent, $3 billion, let's say, to buy the rights for all this stuff. You can't get all that money back off of one match. You need to put as many matches on as you can to try to get $20 back out of each of those to try to recoup as much of that $3 billion as you can. So that's why you want FS1. So the other thing they did, not only did they turn Speed Channel into FS1, but they turned Fuel. If you remember, Fuel was that was another network that they had that was all like
workshop
extreme
style
sports stuff.
Yeah.
It was all extreme sports style stuff. They took all of that and made Fuel FS2. So they knew they were going to have to get rid of some of the racing programming that was on Speed Channel, but they kept the things that did really, really well. Like they kept Supercross and NASCAR and the things that they had big investment in that were producing really good numbers, and just shifted them over to FS1 and or FS2, depending on when it aired and if it conflicted with some other event. But it was a lot easier for Fox to do that because at the time, if you were going to just start up a network, it would have cost you hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. Well, you already had a network sitting there in Speed Channel that had 80 million homes. All you had to do is literally overnight rebrand it,
right?
And you start out with 80 million homes. And Fuel at the time, I think Fuel was probably around 40 million. So it was pretty legit too. And they just rebranded that. And then Roger sold Outdoor Life to NBC, and that became what was NBCSN for quite a while. Now that has gone away too, because they started Peacock.
So then you're saying the transition for dirt racing, sprint cars on television went to TNN very quickly to Speed. And then it sounds like once Speed got under the FS1 banner, dirt racing, I guess, kind of vanished.
No, because you had MAV TV was up and running by then.
That's true.
And so MAV TV, you had all the Lucas Oil stuff went to Mav because that's what Forrest Lucas bought. Forrest bought Mav TV and put a lot of his own stuff over there. Basically, that was a Lucas Oil television network, really. So all the dirt racing that he had went over there. And FS1 and FS2 still handled dirt racing and did dirt racing wherever they had contracts. I mean, that's part of it. It's not that you necessarily let it go, but did those sanctioning bodies go in search of more money somewhere else? Did those rights just get sold to somebody else? And then also, next thing you know, streaming comes along,
right,
and everybody starts changing their perspective on how they think they need to be broadcasting their event. You know, well, maybe what we need to be doing is pay-per-view and have everybody pay us to watch the event.
Well, Dirt Vision was kind of like one of the, at least in the dirt racing industries, from my recollection, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Dirt Vision was kind of, with the World of Outlaws in particular, kind of like one of the first ones to really get the full-time streaming. I know that the Cushion did Knoxville for a minute on pay-per-view, but it did seem like the World of Outlaws were like a little ahead of the game in the streaming department over there.
Yeah, I mean, streaming, when it first started, you know, was done on a wide variety of levels. I mean, you had everything from groups like the Cushion and Dirt Vision that were, you know, pretty legit broadcasting organizations, had, you know, a fair amount of cameras around the racetrack and produced quality television of the event. And then you had 100 guys running around, probably more than that, running around with one camera out of a van,
one cam
up
jams
on the roof of a racetrack, and, you know, charging $29.95 to watch any old event they could get their hands on and making their money that way. And look, I'm not degrading those guys at all, because they were hustling for sure. And if they're smart enough to figure out how to make a living at it, good for them, right? So, but that's just how it all evolved and how it's morphed over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, probably one of the most successful one cam jam guys would be the person ahead of Flo right now. We're going to have him on the show here in a very short amount of time, I believe next week. Michael Rigsby, you know, he was kind of one of those guys, I believe, from the conversations I've had, that, you know, kind of ran around the racetracks doing all the coverage, tried to do some late model races on Dirt, built Dirt on Dirt to the point it was, and then eventually merged that with Flo and took over one of the head leading positions of, I would think most would consider Flo a very leading streaming industry or streaming company in the current dirt track, at least racing industry.
Yeah, well, one of the originators of all the streaming was Chris Grainer, who is a partner with us at Speed Sport One. He owns the company Rivet, and Rigsby actually worked for him. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of those guys go pretty far back in this whole thing. There's been quite a few different names that have come through the streaming world, and many have succeeded and moved on to different organizations that are bigger and stronger than what they were doing back then. Yeah, it is definitely, there's not a lot of one camera guys running around anymore. Nowadays, it's all pretty much a handful of groups that are putting it all together in a variety of ways.
I will say, when I go back and I look at some of those TNN broadcasts, that it did seem like y'all had some really good non-track content. It seemed like almost stories, and I remember the one at Devil's Bow, they did like a whole story on the catfish fishing farm across the street. There was one I saw around Knoxville about the parade. It did seem like, even in some of our modern streaming, the ones we consider some of the best, there's an intense amount of at-track content, but it seems like that out-track content back then was a little better on the TV broadcasts.
Yeah, it's two different ways of doing it. I mean, we call it all television, but it's not all the same. You know, there's different levels of this entire game. You know, the highest level of any quote unquote television is true network TV. That's Fox, CBS, NBC, and ABC, the big four. The budgets that they're working with allow them to do things that the others can only dream of. I mean, I can give you all kinds of examples. I mean, just think of what you see with the Olympics. You know, they'll have so NBC is getting ready to do Italy again. We were talking about that, the Winter Olympics coming up here in February. I guarantee you they've been running around for over a year around the globe shooting feature pieces on all kinds of athletes that are going to be competing in a wide variety of events. Right now, like the biathlon. You haven't thought about the biathlon since the last time you watched the Olympics in the winter 4 years ago. That's the one where they go cross-country skiing and they shoot guns at the same time.
It's like hiking, but a competition.
Yeah, somewhere around the world, and I don't know where it is, but there's somebody who is the number one guy or gal in the biathlon, right? And they probably spent a week with that person in Hungary or Yugoslavia or, who knows where that Switzerland, wherever that person is from. They flew a full team over there and spent, a week with that person learning all about their history and getting pictures of their youth and watching them train and doing all that. And they're putting together a really nice feature piece. And whoever that person is, that will run during the Olympics. You can't do that when you're just streaming. You don't have those kinds of budgets for that. Once you leave that network television level of production, like, for example, when we had the Daytona 500 on CBS, which I worked on, the last one that I did, we had 300 microphones and over 100 cameras scattered around that racetrack on race day.
Just equipment alone.
Equipment.
Yeah, just equipment alone, the dollar. And I'm sure that's the 70K cameras and everything else,
Oh, it was the best of the best at the time. Yeah, absolutely. By far, the best of the best at the time. So that's what I'm talking about. Those levels of production, the Super Bowl level of production is so much greater than anything else you'll see in television. Then you get down to cable, what you see on ESPN or
FS1.
Turner Network Television. Those levels of production are very, very good, but they're a tick or two below what the big networks are doing. You'll see the difference between NASCAR coverage on the CW and NASCAR coverage on Fox. It's not the same. There's differences.
Isn't NASCAR getting money? Isn't NASCAR active? I believe with CW, aren't they a part of the broadcast team in that stuff? Aren't they the ones producing the shows on that?
Some, but the budgets are different.
Okay. So we'll back to the original. So when we see some of that more piece-based content on even back then, TNN in the 90s versus kind of a lack of that in the modern era, are you saying that's pretty much just budget to be able to do that, or creativity as well, or is it not worth the squeeze type deal? What do you? I'm curious on those comparisons in particular.
Well, I think there's certainly creative people working in the streaming world, but they don't have the budget or the time to put that together for some of the broadcasts that you're watching on streaming.
Right.
Because they're just showing up, setting up, and airing the deal and moving on to the next one.
Okay. So is that more so because of how the budget structure is? I'm curious on asking you this too. It does seem like TV is advertisement based, whereas streaming can work in the advertisement game, obviously, but it also works on that subscription basis. That's an avenue, a revenue stream. Is that pretty much the difference there?
So now you're getting into a newer world. So this
I'm here to learn. You're Ralph Sheheen.
Yeah.
I mean,
I get it.
absorb it. You know it all. You've done it all. So
I get it. And crazy enough, I have touched all of these levels at one point in time in my career or another, and a lot of it I'm learning along the way with everybody else because it's kind of the wild, wild west out there these days.
It's always growing
too. In the streaming world, and things are changing rapidly as fast as you can believe. So once you get past cable, then you get into streaming. And streaming is done two ways now. The original way of streaming was all pay-per-view, right? You decided you're going to watch a boxing match or a dirt track event, whatever it is, Chili Bowl. You pay your $50 to watch whatever event, Knoxville, whatever it might be, and you can access through a connected device the streaming service and you put your code in there or whatever you got, and boom, you're connected because you paid your $50 and you get to watch. Well, the other form is what's called a fast channel, which is what my network, Speed Sport 1, is. It's streaming, but it's linear TV like traditional television. So a fast channel means it's free ad-supported streaming television. And free being the key term. The difference between us and, say, a Flow or a Dirt Vision is I am 100% free to the viewer. There's no pay-per-view. There's no subscription. None of that. You just turn it on and start watching. The way we get paid is through the advertising. And that advertising is similar to what you would have experienced growing up on regular TV. So we go out and we sell ads, and those ads are our revenue stream, whereas the revenue stream for a Flow or a Dirt Vision is your subscription fee, your pay-per-view.
Well, and it's a mix too for them, correct? Because they're also going after advertisers. Obviously, they have their commercials and stuff.
Well, they can, but the main function for them is the subscription revenue.
Okay. And is your way of doing it just a little newer? Because we obviously hearing free streaming, that's just like, how is that even possible? That's like a new thing. It sounds, because even like Amazon Prime, and we see football now, they're trying to put it in all these subscription platforms. All of them you got to pay for. Prime Video's not free. I mean, yeah, you get free shipping.
Depends on the level you're watching. So, for example, Speed Sport 1 is on Amazon Prime, but it's on a free level of Amazon Prime.
Okay.
So if you have Amazon, you can already watch Speed Sport 1 right now while we're talking, and you don't have to pay for that level of Amazon to watch it.
Now, is there, and you're saying yours is free for live events too? It's just
free for everything.
Okay. Is that
and
a
here's
little,
why I do that. Here's why why we think that is so important. Because if for racing to survive, I need race fans at the track.
Right.
I need you out there supporting your local track, going to big events, buying your tickets so that the racetrack promoter and sanctioning bodies can stay in business. You have to go, you have to buy popcorn and a cold beer once in a while, and you got to get a T-shirt from your favorite driver, and you got to get your kids a program and a pennant, and all that sort of stuff has to happen to keep the industry moving forward, right? Well, if you've spent $500 over the course of the year on a whole bunch of different streaming services, there goes your discretionary income out the window to go to the racetrack.
Right. Well, and
so when it comes down to you deciding, hey, do we go see the Outlaws run when they come to Eldora, or do we stay home and watch it on the stream because we've already paid for the stream? You might stay home.
Yeah.
I want you to go to the track. I want to put that $500 back in your pocket and let you go to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 events, whatever you spend over the course of the year, and go have a great time. Take the family, get the kids excited about racing, get them the T-shirts of their favorite driver, let them see the cars, touch the cars, smell the cars, all that sort of stuff that hooked all of us when we were young.
Right.
Do it for that younger generation. Get them out to the races. Then when you come home, you can watch Speed Sport 1 all day and all night, and it's all free.
Right. And it obviously helps an audience expansion. I think that's something that, having sprint cars on television back in the day helped. It showed it to people that, want to go to a race. And once they see something, they want to do something. And I think that's something that modern streaming, is lacking because even though I was a little off, I mean, even the ESPN2 example of the basketball fan maybe seeing a race or something and then going to Speed Channel and kind of segmenting the motorsports fan to a channel. Now you've went to streaming, for instance, and it's like, how are you going to convince some random person to spend $150 or whatever amount? It's kind of killing that expansion to the new audience that hasn't went to a track, hasn't seen it before. The greatest advertisement we got now is like Facebook highlight videos, I guess, because they can't watch a race.
No, you're right. No, that casual fan switch over just is not going to happen. Where it really made massive steps was things like 79 Daytona 500, when massive snowstorm in the Northeast, everybody's locked in their house, and the next thing you know, Cale Yarborough's fighting with the Allisons in turn 3, and the King is winning another Daytona 500. That drove ratings through the roof because people were, back then, hell, they only had 3 or 4 channels to surf through anyway. And so you turned that dial physically, of course, because nobody had a remote control.
Right.
You turn in that dial and, you know, you're stuck up in the snow in Buffalo, and all of a sudden you see this beautiful sunshine and palm trees in Florida and these stock cars going around. You know, you sat down and you watched it because it was the only thing that was on, right? And it hooked people. And then all of a sudden, NASCAR took off because of that. Well, the same thing happened with the Slick 50 Sprint Car World Series because we were on during a unique time period. We were the only racing that was on. We had guys who drove very aggressively. The cars looked wild. They're slinging dirt and mud all over the place. We had great personalities, and that's why Danny became such a popular guy so fast, because Danny got it. Danny understood the camera and the significance of it. And if you remember, every interview Danny ever did during that whole series, he would give a wink to the camera at the end of the interview. He did that every time. He did it on purpose because he knew he was connecting through the camera to viewers and making new fans.
Building a character.
New fans, sell more T-shirts, right? So that stuff all worked for guys like Danny. And all of a sudden, these names who people had kind of heard about through reading Speed Sport back in the day, or Area Auto Racing, or whatever it was that you read, you got to see Keith Kaufman and you got to see Brent Kading and Danny Smith and guys in action that you'd only maybe heard a little bit about. But all of a sudden, there they are racing around out in Arizona in the bright sunshine in the middle of December.
Yeah. What do you think streaming can do to help that? You know, I made a comment here recently when Chili's got on board with Gio Scelzi and Spire and High Limit and Flow, obviously the connection, the conglomerate there. And I've been saying it for years, but obviously this is perfect. I've been saying, you know, why does it Flow, or one of these entities? Flow is probably the best one to do it. Go to Chili's, you know, strike up some kind of deal where one TV is dedicated to their streaming service and they show wrestling this night and that night, or 3 TVs of the restaurant. Do some kind of deal like that to help the expansion of the sport, because if it goes to a flow racing model, that expansion, that growth potential it's so sick. Once again, we're back to highlights on YouTube or Facebook, and that's about all we're gonna have. You know, we see these other apps that have broadcast rights with certain restaurant chains. You know, you go in there, I forget the one where it's a blooper reel and it's just bloopers all the time. You know what can what can Flow what can Flow or some of these streaming guys do to help that out? Obviously, you got a good idea here with actual free programming. I think the problem is that's a lot of work to do what you're talking about. You know, getting on the phone and selling the ads is hard, you know.
Don't worry about it. Just tune in and watch.
Well, I understand.
You don't have to sell them. I got to sell them. Don't worry about me. You just tune in and watch. The best thing you can do to support me is just to watch.
Right. Well, obviously.
Let us worry about selling the ads.
Now, so what do you think about the Flow options? What can they do to help if they even want to?
Well, to be honest, I don't really care about Flow. That's not my business, right?
Right.
I say that jokingly.
I didn't know if you had an opinion.
We're all friends in the game. We're all friends.
I just didn't know if you had an opinion on the ideas of them.
No, we do. We are looking into that ourselves. I mean, everybody's exploring every option that's out there. It's not something that hasn't been thought of by others, but you're talking about convincing a national chain to do that in every one of their restaurants all across the country. And sure, that might go over really well at the Chili's right here in Mooresville, North Carolina, because they know they got a hotbed of racing fans here, right? But does that play as well in Schenectady, New York, or Sheboygan, Wisconsin, or Portland, Oregon? I don't know, but I'm sure there's a Chili's in just about every one of those cities.
It did. It did seem like racing was a fair bit more popular back then. What do you think's caused it to be a little more in the dark. I feel like maybe in the 90s, if you asked a random person what a sprint car is, they might know. Or now it's like, what's a dirt track? Is it dirt bikes?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is you've got so many options now. People are pulled in so many different directions. You've got people, baseball's on 24/7, football's on 24/7, basketball's on all the time. There's channels for everything. There's so much out there just in the TV world, whether it's, regular TV, cable, or streaming. There's a million options to watch out there. You got Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime with all the movies. Nobody's going to the movie theaters anymore because everybody's sitting at home watching Netflix, right?
Right.
Same problem they're having. So, and then you've got all these other things. You got real live events to go to, whether it's minor league baseball or a professional NFL football game, or for a lot of people, kids these days are involved in so many more things than were available when I was a kid to be a part of, to do, whether it's travel baseball or cheerleading or gymnastics or whatever it might be. People are being pulled in a million different directions all the time. So there's only 52 weekends out of the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of those weekends get taken over by other things that leave the family 3, maybe 4 weekends when they can really go to the racetrack in their local community? And on that particular weekend, is there something going on that they want to go see? In other words, are the Outlaws coming through that weekend? Or is there a big monster truck family night kind of thing going on at the track that maybe they can get everybody interested in going to? Or is it just a casual weekly show and everybody kind of, I don't know, I don't really know any of those drivers, and, those cars don't look that exciting to me. So there's a million things that come into play here. It's not a simple thing to answer, because if you go back in time, there weren't that many options when racing. Like, you go back to the 50s or 60s, you didn't have all the options pulling people away from the racetrack that you do now. So the racetrack was a big thing to do.
Right. And then also, I guess, element I didn't think about till talking to you here is, if you are a football person, if you're a fishing person, a hunting person, the phones through advertisers are built to, the algorithm is designed to push whatever sells to you. If you're a football
how
person, you can
ridiculous
get,
is it, right?
you can, well, if, for instance, if you're a football person, the phone is going to feed you football on everything, not just on streaming, but it's going to feed it to you on
Absolutely.
Facebook. It's going to feed it to you on YouTube. And it's all
Yep.
advertising based to get you to pay attention to that screen to then see the advertisement during whatever
Right.
you're
Everywhere
watching.
you go, you're going to get inundated with whatever it is you typed into the search bar on your computer one night.
Or
you don't even have to
now.
do that. You just stand around your house, get near your Google thing tucked away in the corner there, and just happen to mention that you're looking for a new microwave, and before you know it, your Facebook feed and everything else is full of every store selling microwaves, right?
Well, I mean, the creepier one is the thinking part, it's getting advanced. You don't even have to say it anymore. You just got to start thinking about it and it'll show you, apparently.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And who knows where this all goes. So I guess the answer to your question is, it's not that racing isn't interesting anymore or is necessarily doing something wrong. It's just that it's harder and harder to capture even 30 seconds to a minute's worth of interest from a potential new fan, because that new fan is being inundated with so much information from so many different directions that you're fighting an uphill battle to try to catch their attention.
Right. Yeah, and
Doesn't mean it can't be done. It's just, it's getting harder to do.
Yeah, and you're against all these different things. And I mean, once again, back to the TV, I think it helped the expansion. I don't know how many. It doesn't seem like too many people in the industry are selling the sport. They're trying to sell it to the people who are here. I am critical of the subscription based platforms just because I say, you're only worried about getting the sub from the casual or the hardcore fan. You know, it does seem like there's a lack in pushing it to a new person. Every time I describe it to someone new or show them a clip or something, it seems like it's a very relative interesting thing. They haven't seen it before. I definitely think sprint car dirt track racing is the pinnacle of racing entertainment. I know that could be debatable, but it does seem to be exciting. But it seems like there is a little bit of a lack of trying to sell it in a way.
Well, I can't speak for the guys that, make the majority of their money off of subscriptions, but I can assume that, their number one resource is the subscription. So their number one revenue stream would be subscriptions. So they're going to sell it to anybody who's willing to plump down, whatever it is, $150 for a year subscription now or more or less, depending on what it is you're tuning in to watch. So I think they'd be happy to take anybody's cash, but it is harder to get somebody to spend that kind of money when they don't know if they're going to like what it is they're going to watch. Right.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It seems like there's that lack in where's that? Who's doing that job? Because I feel like TV was doing that. I feel like there was a lot of things that were doing that prior to this streaming world.
Well, I don't think it's TV's job to do that. I think that's the sanctioning body's job, right? It's the World of Outlaws' job to figure out how to attract new fans, whether that means changing the schedule up as to where you go, maybe changing the routing into some new venues or trying new promotions to get people out to the track. It's the sanctioning body working with the racetrack to increase marketing, to do things to bring out new people. I'll give you two examples of things that I think really worked that were the sanctioning body, the sponsors, and the tracks working together. The first one was NASCAR. NASCAR back in the 90s, when I was heavily involved in the television of NASCAR, you could not go into a convenience store anywhere in the country and not be inundated with gigantic cardboard cutouts, banners hanging all over the place. Here's your Coors Light Winston Cup racing schedule for 1995. Here's your, Jeff Gordon stand-up holding a Diet Pepsi. Here's your entire Coca-Cola racing family stand-ups all around the place. Everywhere you looked was a stand-up or a banner hanging with schedule information, drivers, you name it. It was everywhere in those restaurants. Those convenience stores, right? Supercross, when Monster came on board, was the same way. You had Monster, Red Bull, and Rockstar, three big energy drink companies. Every convenience store you went into, there's Monster Energy Supercross stuff all over the place. Here's your Jason Anderson stand-up for Rockstar. Whoever Red Bull had, Ryan Dungey. All that stuff was just everywhere. And that gets people's attention. And you see that enough, you're like, well, who is this guy? What is this all about? Maybe, it's coming to Angel Stadium. Oh, that's right over here.
Right.
Maybe I'll take the kids and we'll go. It's that kind of stuff that helps drive people to the event. Because then one of the things that Monster did that was really smart, buy a can of Monster, get a free pass to the pit area. Just show up with your empty can of Monster and come on in. So you got to go spend money for Monster, but then you're getting in to the pit area for free. Pretty good trade out. Everybody wins.
Right.
So, coming up with promotional ideas like that can make a big difference. Now, I can't come up with the answer here all of a sudden for the World of Outlaws or for High Limits as to how they can improve that. But those are the kinds of things that I think you have to get out of the box and try to come up with ways of doing that.
Yeah, I definitely think, back then it seemed like there was a lot of promotion in motorsports, in particularly with branding and sponsors. That helped a lot. I do think sprint cars was a little more relevant back then. TV may have helped that. Not sure. It could have just been the adults from that 70s, 80s era that were taking the kids. I kind of feel like the era we're in now is the kids that are from that era that the parents took too. That's a lot of the fan base, I feel like. more so than newer, especially when you look at some of the age ranges on the viewerships of just content in general. Um, uh,
Well, we did do a lot of stuff, thinking back to the TNN sprint car days. We did do a lot of different things that helped cross promote sprint car racers with the NASCAR guys and drag racing people and all the different things that were on TNN. So there was a lot of cross promotion through the network to tie those into each other that would help, maybe get a NASCAR fan interested in either watching or giving a try to a sprint car race. And then the Outlaws and the tracks worked together too and changed the routing to the point where the World of Outlaws were racing here in Charlotte during the Coca-Cola 600 in the month of May, Friday night over at the dirt track. Come watch the Outlaws race and then come see NASCAR race Saturday and Sunday, and same thing at Texas and places like that. So that helped as well. So, there's a lot of different things that can be brought in to have an impact on stuff like that.
Yeah, the Outlaws is interesting. That's an interesting one. I've heard in some interviews with Brian Carter, for instance. I don't know if you know what he's talking about here, but it seems like he came in when Boundless had an issue or something, and he was saying there was just too much money being spent on TV. I don't know if he understands the long-term advantages of that expenditure, but do you have any idea what he's talking about when he says that?
No, I'd have to know what Brian's books were like and, what he's circling in the books where he sees too much money. Is that too much money on production or too much money on, something else that would give him that thought? Only he would know that because he's the one that has access to the books.
Yeah, it was something Boundless was doing. Obviously, they had their issues back then with the Outlaws, but I guess TV was being circled. I didn't get it. I mean, you see how many people are into the sport now, and if you listen, like Caleb Montgomery, a great West Coast driver, you probably know him well. He's over there with a KKR hood that's all cut up and stuff because when he was a kid, he saw it on TV, thought it was cool. I think people underestimate the influence of media on how important that is also, even though it looks like a empty number, the influence is huge, I think, with media.
Television is still far and away the number one most impactful form of marketing, period. You can tell me all you want to tell me about Facebook ads or social media content or whatever it is. None of it adds up to what television does marketing wise. It's still the strongest way to reach people.
Why do you think that is? Do you have a theory, or is it just facts and that's just what it is?
I just think it is what it is. I mean, it has been for decades. And I mean, yeah, granted, social media's grown and all of that, but it's still segmented, like I'm not on TikTok. So if you're putting social media content there on TikTok, I'm not seeing it, but it's a pretty good chance a whole bunch of us watched that football game last night between the Niners and the Bears. And if you ran an ad during that, pretty good chance majority of the country saw it.
Yeah.
Right. And that demographically is a much broader spectrum than what you're going to get on TikTok.
Yeah, that's definitely factual.
Now look, I do social media too. So I'm not sitting here saying that social media is bad. I'm not that dumb or crazy.
Right.
I get that it has its place, but I don't think it's, I hear from promoters all the time. They'll say, "Oh, I only do, Facebook ads or what have you." And I'm like, man, you're really cutting your audience down quite a bit if all you're doing is Facebook ads. Yeah, you're reaching a certain group and it might be impactful within that group. But if that's all you're doing, or if you think that's the number one way to do it, I don't think you're going to maximize your opportunity.
Yeah, TV does a lot. I think idolatry happens a lot through the television. Speaking of that's curious. That makes me think of I obviously did an interview with Tony Stewart last year, and I referenced one interview you did with him where you were talking about, you kind of set him up to say, beating Steve Kinser in a sprint car is just as hard or difficult to beat Jeff Gordon on a Sunday. That leveling system that I do feel like is out there with sprint cars. Now, I got a theory on that. I think that kind of changed in the 90s with the Jeff Gordon era, and it kind of made, a 5-year-old in a go-kart and a 14-year-old in a sprint car. And by 20, if you're not in Cup and you're 25 in a sprint car, you obviously didn't graduate from this imaginary high school college ranks. And sprint cars got put in that AAA mental perspective of society. We see NFL on the TV, AAA is on the streaming, so what do you think? Do you think that it's TV that caused that, the idolatry of NASCAR and stuff like that, that puts most people when they hear sprint car racing kind of in that AAA category?
Well, yeah, I mean, but that didn't just happen overnight. I mean,
I went back to the
you know,
90s with Gordon, so I mean, it's just
yeah, no, but I mean, you got to remember. I mean, NASCAR started in what, the 50s?
Yeah.
And I mean, it was, granted, sprint car racing started way back when too, but NASCAR's growth was bigger, faster, stronger, right? So they became the 800-pound gorilla way before sprint car racing really got any kind of legit regular television coverage. NASCAR was already established. IndyCar racing was already established. NHRA was already established. At that point in time, when you talk about that 90s era, I would tell you that the World of Outlaws were probably number 4 of interest across the U.S. If you put NASCAR at number 1, IndyCar at number 2, and NHRA at number 3, I would say World of Outlaws was way higher than what Formula One or anything else would have been behind it.
Right.
So it was a really big deal there. And, I mean, a lot of things happen, right? Steve Kinser retires and Dude retires, and it all changes. And every sport goes through these peaks and valleys. And I mean, you can see it even in the major league sports of baseball and football and the NBA and all these different leagues. If you go back through time, you can see where some of them were way down and all of a sudden they kind of came back. I mean, the NBA was, you had Dr. J, but in a lot of ways it was non-existent on television until Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came along. And then all of a sudden it exploded. And everybody wanted to watch the Lakers play the Celtics. Didn't really care about anybody else, but when the Lakers and the Celtics were on, everybody was tuning in.
Well,
and then Michael Jordan comes along, and it becomes not just a big deal here, but it becomes a worldwide phenomenon.
Right.
But is it the same now?
According, I hear NBA ratings are a lot lower than they should be.
Yeah, I would tell you that I don't think LeBron James carries the same worldwide weight that Michael Jordan carried in his heyday.
Right. You also had a very perfect storm there in the 90s. You had the Jeff Gordon, Dale Sr. kind of build up. You had the Days of Thunder obviously helped NASCAR a lot as well. And then the split with Indy cars, that was huge, right there at the same time that Gordon was coming in, and the Rusty Wallaces and everybody.
All those things add up. And then they lost all those guys, and their ratings went down a little bit too, didn't it?
Right. Yeah, they're kind of just hanging on.
A lot of people would tell you now that they don't feel as connected to the current crop of drivers that maybe they felt to the guys in the 90s, and for a variety of reasons. Doesn't mean the guys now aren't good drivers. Doesn't mean they're not good people or interesting characters. It just, they're not connecting for whatever reason.
Do you think it's maybe a lack of natural growth? Like Tony Stewart was a Gillette Young Gun at 28 years old. That's when a rookie age was late 20s. So you had time to build reputations in regions, areas, different classes. I think that's one of the biggest issues with NASCAR right now is it's like injected drivers. Here, like this guy because he's here, not because he proved himself in all these regions and areas and built a fan base to take to NASCAR with. It does seem like the dirt guys are the more successful, popular ones that go to NASCAR because they're bringing the whole dirt racing fan base with them. Whereas the other people, are you really bringing a big crowd when you come from like the Cars Tour at 16? I don't know versus Outlaws and USAC.
No, I don't think so. I tend to agree with you on that, and I think we saw that in a variety of different forms. There was a period of time, and it started with the sprint car guys. It started with Jeff, and then after Jeff, you had, Newman and Casey Kane and Smoke and all those guys came along, and every car owner in a NASCAR garage area was watching Thursday Night Thunder or any open wheel event that was on and was trying to figure out who's the next guy that I can go get. Hendrick's already grabbed Gordon and somebody else has got Kane and this guy's got Newman. So who can I go get? Right. Well, the next group that was like that was ASA, because I was involved with both groups at the same time, doing outlaw coverage and doing American Speed Association coverage. And the same thing happened with the ASA. First, Johnny Benson comes along, and Johnny takes off and does good things, and everybody starts looking at ASA going, who's the next Benson? And next thing you know, you got Tony Raines and Tony Roper and all these guys, Jeff Neal, all these guys jumping in to Cup and Busch rides and trying to have a career over there, and they're getting called up from all the different team owners. I had team owners telling me all the time they were watching every race we were doing, whether it was ASA or World of Outlaws, whatever it was, because they were looking for their guy. It was a farm system, and they were having a feeding frenzy because they figured if Gordon can win, then somebody else can do it too.
Well, so
they didn't necessarily know why. They just knew that this guy came from there, so it must be a pretty good, breeding ground for this stuff.
Okay. So then in a way, the rise of NASCAR and then the rise of success with drivers from other divisions is kind of what turned a 410 into a college rank.
Yeah, I mean,
because I don't think, and even the drivers, the future drivers, I don't think that a sprint car fan or future sprint car driver in 1980, for instance, wanted to be anything but a 20-time champion because that was the icon. That was the idolatry-based role of a sprint car fan or driver. That's what you wanted to be. I mean, Ken Schrader was in NASCAR. He wasn't as big as Kinzer in that era. But through the progression, through the success of Gordon, through the rise of NASCAR, a young driver, hell, even David Gravel, he was a Jeff Gordon fan. That's what he wanted to become. That became the new role of if you were going to do sprint cars, this was the successful path.
Yeah, well, the money was just so big in NASCAR that, everybody wanted to get there and get their piece of the pie, right? And who could blame them?
Yeah. And they spiked in money too. I mean,
the Outlaws had gotten better, but it wasn't paying what NASCAR was paying. That's for sure.
Right.
The one group that got hurt in all of that, that's kind of sad and frustrating at the same time, is IndyCar.
Yeah.
I mean, that used to be the way everybody went, right? As you went sprint car racing, all Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt, Rutherford, Unsers. You did sprint cars and midgets and things like that, and then you went to the Speedway.
Right.
Well, the Speedway they all started going to was not in Indy. It was in Daytona, unfortunately, for IndyCar fans, because IndyCar team owners at that point in time were looking at it going, well, we're not just oval track racing anymore. We got all these road courses and, more importantly at the time, street circuits.
Right.
So we don't want guys that are fast at Peevely or Eldora or Chico. We want guys that are fast in go-karts and F2 cars, because that's more like what we're going to have when we go racing through the streets of St. Petersburg and Long Beach.
Right.
But for those of us that loved IndyCar racing, man, we wanted to see the king at Indy. We got to see it, but not as much as we wanted to, right? I wanted Steve, and then that door to open up and get all those guys, get Hod over there, get Danny over there, get Blaney in IndyCar racing. would have been awesome to see those guys at Indianapolis 500.
Right. Well, the split is what helped them get those opportunities, obviously.
It did, but it hurt the sport overall, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. And
unfortunately, it didn't help enough.
I'm curious on that. Do you think, you're probably the best guy to ask about this. I've done a lot of research on the
Oh,
sport.
God.
And,
If I'm the best guy for you to ask this question to, we got to change the level of the bar.
No. What I mean by that is you're in media. You've obviously been in media long enough to see how people react and change to it. I mean, it's kind of oblivious.
Yeah.
Is it dumb for us to sit here and say, the reason that, or maybe a really big reason that black 1978 Trans Am sold with the gold eagle on the hood is because of Smokey and the Bandit? That's what I mean.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. This is how media and everything operates. I'm
Yeah.
curious.
No, I'm just kidding with you.
Well, obviously, Cart got really big at one point. Cart was huge.
Yes, it did.
And they took Nigel Mansell, like F1's champion, left.
Yep.
And that was the swap year, I believe, as well, because Michael Andretti went to F1. So it was like a swap, one guy for the other. Do you think that there was and then the split came very soon after that. Do you think that there was some possible national or worldly animosity towards IndyCar racing and what it was becoming in the entertainment capital of America by F1? I mean, I think F1 honestly felt it threatened by CART, and that they kind of fueled the split with the IndyCar scene.
Well, you're not far off, but streamline your thought there. It's not F1. It was Bernie Ecclestone.
Well, Ecclestone, I'm sure Ferrari and the McLaren people didn't like it either, but.
Yeah, but the only one that matters is Bernie back then. Bernie ruled with an iron fist.
And who is that? Who is Bernie Ecclestone for the crowd that don't know who that is? Who is that?
He was Formula One. He's the guy that owned the whole thing.
Okay, at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it would take 3 shows to sit back and explain the evolution of Bernie Ecclestone taking over Formula One. But in the quick 411, Bernie started out as basically a marketing guy and parlayed that into team ownership, and then parlayed team ownership into I'll be kind of a guy that pulls a union together out of this deal, and we'll kind of get all the team owners organized together so they get a little bit bigger piece of the pie, and then I'll go out and sell all this stuff, and I'll take a real big chunk of it, but everybody else will get money, so they'll all be happy that they're getting money. And then he just kind of kept parlaying all these different things into gathering up more and more pieces of that Formula One pie. And before you knew it, he controlled the entire thing.
Oh my God! Hold on, you just explained Brad Sweet. Oh my God! But anyway, that just you kind of just did. Continue.
Yeah.
While you were saying that, I was like, wait, that's exactly
what
Brad Sweet did. Oh my God!
Anyway, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, Brad is
wow.
And not in a negative way.
I didn't plan on saying that. Just as you were explaining it, it's like, wait, this is what Brad Sweet did. Sorry.
And Brad's a very smart guy, and Brad is a brilliant business guy and a hell of a race car driver. Right?
Let's not get on that, but stay with this F1 deal. But wow, we'll talk about High Limit here in a minute. But
that's how a lot of this racing stuff has been done over the years. When you look back to which groups are most successful, a lot of times it's when it's run by an iron fist. There's one voice that controls everything. It was the same thing with NASCAR for many, many years. Big Bill France, he was the guy. And, he yay or nayed everything that happened, good, bad, or indifferent. It was Big Bill France that put the stamp of approval or disapproval on it, right?
Right.
And then in IndyCar, it was the Holman George family owning the Indianapolis Speedway and everything that happened.
What was CART technically? It was the Championship Auto Racing Team, so it was technically a union in itself, right?
Correct.
And it had 2 runs. It had 1 run, I believe, in the 70s, 80s, and like NASCAR and Indianapolis rejected it, so it fizzled away. And then it came back again, and then that's when it was really on a run.
Yeah, so you had team owners that were very successful, like Roger Penske and Ganassi and, the different groups like Newman Haas and all that, that were a big part of CART. And they were successful, smart businessmen, and they were able to come in there and control a part of IndyCar racing. They always had to work with the speedway. And again, for those fans that, the blanket term, when you say the speedway, everybody knows you're talking, or should know you're talking about Indianapolis. That term goes to that track.
Right.
If you're talking about Daytona or anywhere else, you don't just say the speedway unless you happen to be standing in the neighborhood, right? But the blanket terminology of the speedway means Indianapolis. So anyway, Indianapolis Motor Speedway controlled a significant chunk of IndyCar racing as well, always has. And
so even when it was CART, Indy still had a big seat at the table.
Oh, massive seat at the table, yes, which is why the split eventually happened, because Tony George wanted more oval track races because that's what he had, and he wanted guys to get developed as good open wheel oval track drivers so that his show at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in May would be the best it could be, which makes sense, right?
Right.
I mean, he wanted to see guys like Steve Kinser. He was frustrated that what we had talked about there moments ago about that pipeline of guys like Mario and AJ coming out of midgets and sprint cars and on up to Indianapolis had gone away. He wanted to kind of open that pipeline up again, and he was hoping that by adding more oval track races to the IndyCar calendar, that it would give opportunity for guys like Steve Kinser or Jack Hodenshield or whoever an opportunity to get behind the wheel of an IndyCar and maybe run the Indy 500, because Tony knew that those guys had legions of fans at places like Eldora and Knoxville and Placerville and Chico, that, man, if Brad Sweet could come to the Speedway and run an IndyCar, all of those fans would follow with him.
Kind of like what Gordon did, bringing in the open wheel fans into NASCAR.
NASCAR.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
he saw that, and he looked at it and he went, boy, we blew it, because that kid's going to be a huge star, and he should have been an IndyCar star, is what Tony George was thinking.
It is very recollectional that Cole Trickle, was a sprint car guy out of California in 1990, and here comes a real one,
Well, that was Tim Richmond.
Well, but Tim Richmond was from Ohio.
But Tim Richmond was another sprint car guy that.
But didn't he run everything? He ran Indy cars, right?
He did, but he didn't. I mean, he didn't. Again, he left the IndyCar world to go to NASCAR, and that's what was frustrating Tony George. Tony George is seeing guys that should have come his way and stayed there and wanted to be there, go down to NASCAR and run places like Martinsville and, Richmond, instead of running Michigan and Indianapolis in an open wheel car.
So how would Bernie Ecclestone would have, if he was jealous in all this, the CART rise, how would you think he would assist, the IRL or from starting up? I mean, did he want
Bernie?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Bernie obviously saw all this open wheel IndyCar stuff pulling drivers away that could potentially have been Formula One guys or feeder series guys within the Formula, the F2, F3 ladder system. And these drivers, all these young, Brazilian drivers, a lot of these kids out of South America, you think of the Tony Kanans and Elios and
Juan
all
Pablo.
These guys. Yeah. I mean, Juan eventually went to F1, but they were taking not just their talents, but they were taking big chunks of money. And you had all the Mexican drivers too. You had a lot of Mexican, Mauricio Guljamin, guys like that. You had, trying to think of some of the Mexican drivers that escaped my mind here. They've been talking about so much, but all these kids and young drivers that could have been going into the Formula One pipeline went into the IndyCar pipeline, because all these IndyCar team owners needed guys that can run road courses and ovals. So at the time, that IndyCar schedule, that kart schedule, had a lot more road courses and street circuits on it than it did ovals. So, you know, Roger Penske would sit there and go, I'll take Gilles de Ferran all day, because maybe he doesn't have a lot of experience on an oval, but I don't have to worry about that many of them, and I can get him up to speed pretty quickly on that because I'm going to give him good equipment. And I know when we get to the road courses and the street circuits, which are going to dominate the calendar, he's going to be a rocket. And they were.
I would say no offense to the oval guys, but road course racing is pretty tough. I mean, it's probably way easier to take a road course guy and teach him to turn 2 times versus taking a guy from an oval discipline and trying to teach him to turn 14, you know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on the skill set of the driver, you know, but I mean, there's so much to think about aero-wise and everything on these big, fast ovals like Indianapolis or Michigan back in those days. You know, there was a lot to that. But they're both challenging. They're both difficult. But the key was the calendar was full of more of the lefts and rights than it was of just the lefts. So they were getting the drivers over. These team owners are offering big contracts and big opportunities. And the sponsors wanted to be over here because it gave them entrance into the U.S. market, North American market, and great opportunities for them. So it all worked. And so Bernie's sitting there going, well, I need to get Formula One bigger in America. And if this thing over here with these road courses is really taken off, then why would a St. Petersburg ever give me money to bring Formula One to their street circuit when they can get this IndyCar deal for a lot less, right? So he wanted IndyCar to go back to oval racing. If it was going to survive, he'd prefer it to be under the Tony George IRL idea.
That wasn't created at that time, but you're saying idea.
Right. Well, yeah, he was feeding Tony the idea that, you know, you should break away. You should do this. Yeah, do that. You don't need those guys. You got the Speedway. The Speedway's the big deal. Indianapolis is the thing, right? He was feeding Tony. Yeah, manipulating the market for sure. And convinced, you know, gave Tony enough ego boost that he thought, I can do this. And so he went for it.
Well,
and you had the big split.
Yeah, and that took it. I think fans too. I think international fans were starting to like it more in America too. You know, I think long term, I think NASCAR probably even had a hand in it too, personally, conspiratorially. Just because, like I was saying, you know, I think it is, you know, late models of sprint cars in the dirt world. I think it's even more split when it's Indy cars to NASCAR, you know, style racing on asphalt. And an international fan may tune into a kart race if he's a Formula One fan because it looks similar. But to get him to turn into a NASCAR event, it's like watching a late model race. You know, they're not late model fans.
Right. Well, NASCAR's interest in the split was different than
Well, didn't they have a lot of the tracks that they went to too?
Well, they just wanted to see IndyCar racing come down 2 or 3 notches in general.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
They had them running at some of their events. But as you pointed out earlier, in that era, kart was really pretty strong. I mean, you have Rick Mears and Mario Andretti, and Al Unser was still running, and Al Jr., and Michael Andretti was competing, and Emerson Fittipaldi, and then Nigel. I mean, man, kart back then was some really strong competition for NASCAR on television and the race fans' pocketbook. So NASCAR just wanted kart to come down a couple of notches and have people go, well, it's not as good anymore, and I'll just go to Dover instead and watch the NASCAR race.
Wouldn't you say that IndyCar was number one throughout the entire American motorsports history until that switch in the 90s?
Well, you could probably make that argument in some ways. You know, you'd have to go back and really look at the ratings and the numbers, which I don't have off the top of my head to know who was really killing it. I mean, the thing about NASCAR's always had more events on their schedule, right? So just the sheer numbers of more events, a 36 race calendar, as opposed to, IndyCar probably never ran more than 25 or so.
Right.
I'm going to guess in one given year.
Well, and they were very regional, I mean, even Waltrip said, Jeff Gordon put us outside of that southeastern area of the world. And once again, when you say Jeff Gordon era, you can also say split era. They happened at the same time, pretty much.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Perfect storm. Perfect storm.
I mean, there's definitely people that are going to tell you that IndyCar was bigger. I mean, IndyCar was huge in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, but I think, again, just NASCAR having more races on TV and everything at the time probably got them a little bit more mainstream quicker in some ways beyond the Indy 500.
Yeah. Well, and that is interesting. You mentioned about how the dirt guys would go into IndyCar. Though I would say that was predominantly non-wing. Do you think when wings came onto the scene, and because the Outlaws started in '78, they're technically the baby in all this. Do you think when they put wings on sprint cars and that became popular, that it kind of split off from that career destinied spot? I mean, for instance, the 1984, we documented Kings Royal, even though it was a crazy amount, the '84 Kings Royal paid $50,000. The Talladega 500 at that point paid 47. Dale Earnhardt Sr. technically made less in one race than Kinzer. So it did seem like the wing sprint car kind of split off into its own little realm versus that traditional non-wing to IndyCar path.
Yeah, but there weren't that many races in the dirt world that were paying like that, right? I mean, you got one. A guy like Steve Kinzer raced 100 and some odd races a year.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways was probably, certainly at some events, was making more money off T-shirt sales than he was off of race purse, right? So that wasn't the case in NASCAR. I mean, it paid pretty good.
Oh yeah,
more weekends than not.
For sure. I was just saying more so like that path from the dirt tracks, the non-wing to the IndyCar deal. It just seemed like that wing car and the Outlaws in particular kind of created its own destiny career path outside of all that, until the NASCAR thing came along with the Gordon transition.
Yeah. So you're saying that you think what the wings hurt drivers getting?
No, I think it was good for its own industry. Like, I think, the reason super late model racing is so healthy on the dirt right now, money-wise and car count, is because that class never got pushed out. They tried with Purvis or whatever, and I feel like Scott Bloomquist technically saved that division because he became a bigger star for super late model racing on dirt. So all the money, all the investment went into building super late model teams and the fans stayed there. Whereas like in your sprint car industry, a lot of money went to trying to get to NASCAR. That's where the rent-a-rides with the midgets are right now. Even though short term it was good for sprint car racing, I guess, to try to go to NASCAR. I think if you could stay on your own little like idolatry based performance of here's the goal, like Kinzer 20-time champion or Scott Bloomquist now, I think that's better for the individual sport. I don't think the Wings snubbed them from going to NASCAR or IndyCar. I'm saying it seemed like it had split off and started becoming its own like top level at some point, if that made sense.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I agree. Sprint car racing. I think I don't know if the wing made the difference so much. It certainly became bigger in certain regions, right? I mean, certain regions kind of said we're a wing region or a non-wing region, right? Like
PA.
The Indiana area tends to be more non-wing, right? Because it's more traditional in that market, whereas wing racing is bigger in Pennsylvania and California and Ohio. Right. So, yeah, I don't know if – I think ultimately with all this, you know, that we're talking about here, that what really makes the big difference in all this open wheel stuff is that the fans could relate to the drivers. And those drivers became heroes because of that. And these drivers were able to carve out really nice careers by being really big fish in whatever size pond that is.
Right.
I don't know if it's a small pond or it's certainly a big pond in those regions or to those fans. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with people just liking one form of racing over another. But then there's others like me. I just love all forms of racing. I mean, I really, truly do.
Right.
I found that I can have as much fun, excuse me, at a dirt bike race as I can at an IndyCar race.
Right.
Excuse me. Or a sprint car race or a drag race or whatever it might be, because to me, it's all interesting. It's all cool. I think just racing in general is really cool, and I want to be a part of all of it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to miss any of it.
Right.
You know?
Right, yeah. I mean, the only class I feel that's fell off the hill, at least for recognition and respect that it deserves, is the freaking stadium-style trucks. You know, they went away because of the NASCAR deal, I guess. But, you know, W-Core is so visually appealing to watch. It just doesn't have the influx that it once had. But that's back to idolatry. What's cool, technically? That's that media perspective that gets people to spend here, spend there, not just in an item, but in a career or path.
Well, some of that's marketing too, right? I mean, talk about off-road truck racing. You know, NASCAR came along with the truck series, and everybody decided the best way to sell F-150s or Silverados is to be racing them at Daytona as opposed to racing them in Baja.
Right.
You know? So they spend more money on that than the other. So the off-road world is still there. It's still succeeding. But, yeah, it took a bit of a hit when that happened.
Yeah, definitely. I guess we could switch a little bit. We've recognized that Brad Sweet is Bernie Ecclestone. That's crazy. I don't know how that happened, but it did happen. As you were explaining it, it was like that you could have replaced Bernie with Brad, and it's exactly the same thing. What do you think of the transition in sprint car racing? It's obviously happened here recently with the split. Kind of interestingly enough, they were influenced by the late model world. I said that, 3 years ago. Kyle's finally came out and said that now. It is interesting to see the sprint car world change versus, it's been that single department for so long with the Outlaws. I think the Outlaws could have gave them the 12 races and it would have never happened. Everybody denied that. Then Kyle acknowledged that a couple weeks ago too. So that's the truth. But what do you think of the current layout of Bernie Ecclestone's Brad Sweet's High Limit series in this Outlaw split?
Well, first of all, I don't want to take credit for naming Brad Sweet Bernie Ecclestone because that doesn't always mean good things to everybody.
It was very similar. It was. I mean,
it is. It is. I was just talking about Bernie. You were the one that put two and two together. I liked where you went with it.
I was listening to it as a Bernie explanation, but as you were explaining it, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, it's him.
Yeah, well, it is and it isn't, right? Because Bernie was very ruthless in how he did things. I don't see Brad as being that ruthless. I see Brad being smart, cagey, and aggressive and risk-taking, because what he and Kyle are doing was a huge risk in the early stages. It's not as big a risk now. They're having some success, but it's still pretty good-sized risk, and they've got a lot on the line.
Right.
And I respect both of them quite a bit for what they're doing. I consider them both good friends, and I like what they're doing. Look, ultimately, competition is good, right?
Right.
It doesn't hurt. it's forcing the Outlaws to rethink some things. The Outlaws are forcing high limits to rethink some things. That's good for everybody. It's going to force other sanctioning body groups in the sprint car world, whether they're on a national level or a regional level or whatever it might be, to think about how they're doing things and what can they do to be better to compete for that ticket buying dollar the fans are spending. We're seeing the same thing in drag racing right now.
I was going to reference that. Yeah. Is it? Hold on. Is it drag racing anymore though? I mean, what is IHRA now? I mean, we talked about this the other day. I had somebody pretty high ranking say they were thinking of buying IMCA. Apparently that's not true, but IHRA, they're not just drag racing anymore. I mean, what's happening there? You are all over it. What is going on?
Well, I can't speak for Daryl, but I can tell you that he's very excited about motorsports and he's looking all over the place. So I don't know where it's going next, because I'll tell you, we made a ton of announcements at PRI, and I didn't know about most of them until they came to us and said, hey, time to make another announcement. I was like, what? So, I mean, things are happening lightning fast over there. But yes, so far he's into drag racing. He's into drag boats. He's into offshore boat racing. He's in F1 power boats. He's into shootout competitions with the boats, like the Lake of the Ozarks shootout. He's starting up a stock car series, pavement stock car series. And he's gotten truck and tractor pulls going. He's got some bull riding events going. And he told us at PRI he's looking at dirt tracks.
Yeah, so, Memphis. Yeah.
Or dirt events. Whether or not he's going to buy a bunch of dirt tracks, I don't know. But, I mean, he's looking at the dirt world. Let's just put it that way.
I do think that the dirt, I did say this about it, and I do think that it still holds true. I think, first of all, I think the racing competition on dirt is probably number one in the world. That's just my opinion. Just because there's so many competitors, you know, and it doesn't cost a lot. You know, I was at PRI, I went to lunch, and me and a British guy got to talking, and he's like, well, how much do one of those dirt cars cost? I'm like, oh, you could be race ready in a 410 with the best of the best, about 120,000. He's like, wow, our transmissions are 80. So he's like, you know, I think that's why it's so competitive. But I also think when it comes to IHRA's interest in dirt racing, it's just as competitive in the promotional aspect. I mean, we could talk high limit World of Outlaws. That's just scratching the top surfaces of it. I mean, when you consider IMCA and you consider all the different little sanctions and regions scattered throughout and the different track promotions and track promoter groups, I mean, there's a lot of competition in the dirt racing world. I think more so than all the other elements when you consider short track oval or even drag racing. I think it's very tough to compete in the dirt track world, even in that sector that IHRA may be interested in.
Oh yeah. No, there's a lot of different groups out there, and it's broken down into a lot of splinter groups for sure. So it's going to take a lot for anybody to pull it all together.
What would you do?
What would I do?
Yeah, if you were trying to come into dirt racing and you had the IHR keys turned in the car and you're running it, what's the way to get into dirt racing if you were IHRA?
Oh, God, well, I don't know.
You're a smart guy, Ralph.
I don't want to speak for IHRA. I'll speak as a fan. I mean, if I, hit the right 5 numbers in the Powerball, Ralph Sheheen personally would want to be involved in sprint car racing just because it's a passion of mine,
Okay.
That's obviously the height of dirt track racing in my mind. Sprint cars are. Dirt late models are certainly huge, but I would put them second to sprint cars as far as, well, for me, they're one of, I mean, you're going to find somebody else, maybe my next door neighbor, who would tell you the other, it flip-flop that, and you can make an argument for that, right? Because in certain parts of the country, dirt late models are certainly huge business.
Right.
But I tend to think that sprint cars are the bigger deal. The open wheel dirt side of it is a bigger thing. So me personally, yeah, I would want to be involved in sprint car racing just because that's where my passion lies. Would that be the best business move? I don't know. I have to ask Brad and Brian about that, see what those two think. But, you know, that might be all locked up by now, too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So how would you even Powerball win that? Would you have to come in and do like some kind of national style schedule and pay 100,000 to win 10 races or something with the broadcast deal? I mean, how would that even, how could you trump what's happening now? That would be the question.
Yeah, I don't know if you could, because
you'd have to do it with the money.
They've divvied up all the big name drivers, right?
Yeah.
And all the big name guys are already one flag or the other. So, yeah, you'd probably have to just outspend everybody.
Yeah, you'd have to come in and do some kind of nationals, like 10 national events, but then the permissions are issues and all that, and then something that big would scare them away. I guess you'd almost have to come in as IHRA and buy a high limit charter and just be a part of it. Would it be Team IHRA on the high limit series or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they would do. I don't know if they're interested in sprint car racing. I don't know what their
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, you could
interest is.
You could hit Powerball, and really, just because of the competition and the situation, it's almost locked. You know?
No, it really is. I think you know, again, if you hit the Powerball, you're becoming in not as a sanctioning body, but I think I would be thrilled to come in as a team owner and have a team running in one or both groups, right? Maybe you split it and you have one car in high limit and another car on the Outlaws, and you see everybody in Knoxville in August.
Right. Yeah, you'd almost have to just come in and blend. You couldn't come in and take over.
Yeah, so I don't know if taking over in the dirt world is something you can do anymore.
No. It's got smarter. Although it hasn't truly, like we don't see, like even in other sports, we don't see sports agents a lot out there. I think Rico's got one, and I guess Gio's probably got now one with Spire. But outside of that, you know, they ain't really sports agencies. There's, you know, in NASCAR, they got insurance and all this stuff. It has progressed, but it hasn't technically progressed to the levels we see some of the other sports at.
No, and in some ways it needs to progress more of that, right? Racers in general need to be looking at insurance no matter what you race. I mean, racers have always been bad about things like that. They'll spend a few $100s to put a new right rear on, but they won't put the best helmet they can buy.
Right.
You need to be, you need to take care of all that stuff.
Well, and that's curious. I know we had talked before we got on the air about Supercross, correct? What was the weird? There was a discussion there with insurance. They have like a championship insurance or something. I know this is off topic a little bit, but what's up with that industry? How does that work? What is that? You know what I'm talking about?
Every sanctioning body is the same way. When you buy your license to go racing with a sanctioning body, all the major sanctioning bodies, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, whoever, there is usually, and you'd have to go case by case and look into the small print in every sanctioning body's agreement when you sign up for your hard card, your license for the year. There is usually a bit of insurance that's included in your licensing.
Okay.
But it's never enough, right? Because racing injuries can be catastrophic.
Right.
So,
well, and I was more
usually what you get with your license is good, but not as good as it can be.
Okay.
So you need to supplant that by going out and getting your own, whether it's, with SIS or one of the other major groups that are out there handling racer insurance. It behooves every racer to make sure they've talked to an insurance agent and that they're properly covered for those kinds of catastrophic situations, because you never know if it's going to happen, and you want to make sure you're covered when it does. And you shouldn't just call up your local, State Farm guy. You should talk to some agency that deals with motorsports, real professionals that understand racing and understand what those situations could be how bad they could be, how you would be treated for, what the recovery processes would be like. Because if you have one of those major wrecks, you're out of your job for, fans don't always think about this sort of thing.
Right.
If you're out of the seat, you're out of the paycheck. You're not necessarily getting paid just because that car owner's paying somebody else now to fill that seat. So if you're not racing, you're not earning. So that's why you got to have, good insurance to cover in case, God forbid, you're stuck in a situation like that, no matter what you're racing.
Right. And then we lack so much in contractual agreements between car owners and teams. We multi-year agreements. I mean, I feel like that who could potentially even have multi-year agreements in racing and on dirt right now? Maybe one or two guys, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything else in racing. The top 10% have it pretty good, no matter what form of racing you're talking about, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, Supercross, flat track, whatever it might be. Those guys all have the best contracts, the best payouts, all that. They're making the most money, have the most security. You start dropping down through that top 20, behind the top 20, those numbers start changing pretty significantly, pretty fast.
Right.
And, you find that the guys at the back end of the field are, just squeaking by.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
no matter what you're talking about.
Right. And even some of the biggest names in our sport could be fired Monday. If the car owner doesn't like it, it's that kind of power,
Well, look, it's a performance-based business, right?
Yeah.
No different than the NFL or any stick and ball sport. If you're not performing, you're not playing, you're not getting paid. It's just that simple. Because there's a million other people waiting outside the front door of that car owner's shop. Some of them, a lot of them nowadays, with a check from a sponsor too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you that. I know we're keeping you too late. I don't know how long we can have you, but that is something that is happening slowly in dirt racing. It's already, I would say, overtaken some others. It's almost coming across, not in dirt all the way. I would say maybe the midget division. I would say in NASCAR in particularly, for sure. If I was to explain it to a random person, I would take them down to the local go-kart K1 Speed, which is a sponsor of the show. And I would say NASCAR's basically, instead of $5 for 5 minutes, it's $5 million for 1 year. In the truck series or Xfinity, you get up, it's obviously going to be way more than that. You do have a little bit of that rent a car mentality that I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you're going to feel about it. You've been in different industries where it's kind of normal. Dirt racing, I feel like, is probably one of the industries that still has some of that integrity left. I think that's because how difficult the cars are to drive. I think on asphalt, you can nerf the cars enough, set it up well enough, and an average driver can look really good, and a really good driver can look average. I mean, look at Kyle in the Ganassi car. It was an average car, so he finished average. Didn't matter how good he was. Got in the Hendrick car, superstar. So how do you feel about that in motorsports in general? I don't know if you're seeing it creep into the dirt world a little bit. It is. But how do you feel about that basic, go-kart mentality in the rental ride perspective coming in, as it is in dirt and has been in asphalt, and is really hurting the integrity over there, in my opinion?
I don't think there's a form of racing where it's not impacted that. No matter how high or how low up the ladder you go. And that's just because racing is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just don't have the revenue streams in some forms of motorsports that you get in these big time stick and ball leagues where team owners are getting a share of the TV revenue and, all that sort of thing. In racing is the worst for, if there's a way I can spend more money to make my car go faster, whether it's on the driver or a speed part, I'm buying it some way, somehow, right? So racers will always overspend what they should because there's a chance they can go faster.
Right.
It's no different than what we were talking about on the safety side. Guys will overlook the level of their safety gear or the helmet they're wearing, or do they or don't they buy insurance, because that $300-400 they could have spent on insurance for a year, they could buy this Go Fast part over here, or a new right rear tire that might help them when they get to Chico. It's not going to work at Placerville, but it'll help them at Chico, and it's worth it there, you know?
Right.
So it's just that mentality that everybody's always looking for the money. And even though you might be a billionaire car owner or a millionaire car owner, depending on the level you're racing at, you still need to cover bills. And so if you can get a kid who's fast or fast enough, but he can bring a check with him, it can be awful tempting to keep your program open and your car on the road.
Right. Do you think it is a little more difficult to succeed in dirt just because of the elements? I do feel, and this is just my opinion, I feel like a 900 horsepower sprint car on a dry slick Knoxville or Eldora is possibly one of the most difficult vehicles to drive in the world, period. I think that if you don't have that it factor, you're going to finish mid-pack no matter what kind of car you're in. And then obviously our cars are affordable enough to where there's enough well-equipped vehicles. You know, I think that's the issue in NASCAR is you got only a few guys that can afford that elite speed, you know. So I think
Yes.
I think that it's the vehicles and their price points that don't allow it to succeed more so in our sport versus the counterparts we see.
I think dirt racing is definitely one of those. It's not the only one, but it's certainly one of those where skill set can matter more than the quality of the car you're in. I think you could put Steve Kinzer in any car up and down the Outlaw starting grid, and the King's still going to the damn front. I mean, the guy's he was a beast.
Right.
You know, Sammy's the same way.
Kyle in today's world, some of our elites.
Kyle's another
Gravel.
one. Yeah, Tony was another one, right? You could put those guys in any one of those cars, and they're going to go well. That's why I was very fortunate to be a part of the 2 Trading Paint Series events that were done when we had Jeff Gordon and Juan Pablo at Indianapolis, switching
driver swap.
F1 car and the NASCAR Cup car. And then we did one at Watkins Glen where we had Tony Stewart and Lewis Hamilton.
Right.
And I would love to see, I know it's been bantered about a little bit and it's never going to happen, unfortunately, but I would love to see Kyle Larson and Max Verstappen swap a Formula One car and a sprint car. Oh my God, that would be unbelievable.
It would give a lot of credit to the sprint car. I've got pretty upset in the past that you don't really see our sprint car guys on a recognizable platform until they get killed. Technically, Brian Kloss and all these guys. I think once again the talent that it takes to wheel those cars around should get a little more recognition on a regular basis. But once again, I understand the logistics of the there's just not enough fans and all that. You're never going to see it on ESPN or a highlight from Knoxville. You may one day, but
but there's reasons to see now.
There's logic. I'm not saying there's not logic.
No, there's other things that get in the way of this. And I mean, this can get so fractured and so splintered off, and we can run down a tremendous amount of a lot of different rabbit holes.
I think NASCAR is scared
But one
of
of the things you have to remember too, like with ESPN, take SportsCenter for example. SportsCenter doesn't talk about NASCAR as much now as they did when ESPN had the rights to NASCAR. Right?
Right.
Well, that's because if you don't have the rights, why am I going to do everything to build up viewership for another network and have people go over there and watch that event?
Right.
You're not.
Right.
You're not. So they're going to focus on the things that they're spending money on because they're trying to build those things up and drive people to their events, whether it's basketball or baseball or the NFL or whatever it is they've got, right? So they don't have sprint car races on a regular basis, if ever, on the network right now on ESPN. So they're not going to go to Knoxville and build up the ratings so that people don't watch whatever they've got on the Saturday night of the Knoxville Nationals on ESPN, because they don't want them all running over to Flow or Dirt Vision or wherever it's at. Right?
Well, and that,
there's a lot of rabbit holes here. So all I'm getting at. I mean,
well, and that's my rabbit hole with NASCAR in particular. I mean, I don't think that NASCAR wants people to see too many sprint car races. I think it could. They look what they did to IndyCar racing. You know,
no, I
look
don't
what
buy
you
that.
look what
I don't buy that.
look what UFC did to boxing. I mean, if
I don't buy that with
people start
NASCAR.
liking one thing, they stop
I
going
don't
to
buy
the
that
other.
with NASCAR and sprint car racing.
Why would you say that?
Because they're too big. They're not impacted by sprint car racing.
Well, I understand that, but everything shifts. It only takes a few years to really move one industry over another. Like I said, they kind of did it to Indy. Obviously, they had a lot better jump than sprint car racing has right now.
Whole different level of comparison there.
Well, I agree. And I do say that, you know, when people say, well, sprint car racing is going to be NASCAR-fied or corporate entities and all that, we don't. Every time we talk about getting sprint cars bigger, you always hear, well, we don't want sprint cars to be NASCAR. And it's like, there's several levels between NASCAR and where sprint cars are right now. Like, let's just work on getting sprint cars maybe close to rallycross or something, or supercross, you know, because that's below NASCAR. But I think that they're way more relevant in our general society.
I wouldn't agree with the rally car part of it, but I would definitely tell you, after having spent all the years I have with Supercross, that Supercross is a huge thing, but there's a whole different reason for that.
Okay.
That you don't have with sprint cars.
What is that?
Well, first of all, Supercross, you have to talk about it as moto. Okay, and a little education here. Moto, for those that are not necessarily fans of two-wheel dirt bike racing, encompasses motocross, arena cross, supercross, and anything that's done on a dirt bike like that. Okay? Moto is an overall umbrella term for that world. Okay? So you just talk about it in general. You say, I'm a fan of moto. Means you like motocross.
Oh, I thought that might happen. Hold on. We lost him. We're getting him back. Hold on. Come on now, answer the phone. We got it.
Chaz, you there?
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, I thought that might happen. We hit the 2 limit hour, and I have it set to 2 hours, but it's fine. Continue. Moto, we're in this. This. So it's moto.
Right. So moto
is
a lifestyle. When you go to a supercross event or a motocross event, you will find the majority of the fans in the stands probably own and ride a dirt bike.
Okay.
You go to Knoxville, there's not many people in the grandstands that own or drive a 410 sprint car.
Right.
Or a 360 or a 305.
Or can put a down payment on one and have one at the house, you know, or pay payments.
They just like that form of quote unquote entertainment. Right? They think sprint car racing is fun to do. It's like going to the movies or, you know, watching a baseball game, whatever it might be. That's how they like their entertainment. But in that moto world, a massive amount of that fan base actually rides a dirt bike. And I'm not just talking about dad and little Billy. I'm talking about mom and little Adrian as well.
Okay.
You know, the boys and the girls, the moms and the dads ride as a whole family.
Right.
And they have invested a tremendous amount of time and money and effort into that lifestyle because they are eating it, drinking it, and sleeping it all day. Those families are buying and drinking Monster Energies and Red Bulls and Rock Stars, and the kids are dressed head to toe when they go to school in Fox gear and all the stuff that comes with it. And then on the weekends, they're headed out to Glamis or wherever they go ride at Pala or whatever local dirt track they ride at. And they are all into it. And those kids are competing at Club MX and all the different facilities around the country. And they're they're running all the amateur races, and that little kid dreams of going to Loretta Lynn's and winning a championship there, and someday he wants to be James Stewart or Ricky Carmichael or Jet Lawrence or whoever he dreams of now. So it's a whole different thing in that moto world because it's an absolute lifestyle for those families.
And that sounds rare in anything. I mean, what else is even close to that? I can't think of
Nothing
anything.
in motorsports, not even NASCAR's like that because
Yeah, no one can have a
you
cup
can't-
car. Yeah.
you don't have a cup car. I will tell you, when my son, I remember this vividly, when my kids, not just my son, but my son and my daughter, they're 3 years apart, when they were in school, middle school, grammar school, and all that, I'd go over there, do the parent event, and be walking around the hallways. You see all the kids running by. And I live in Mooresville, North Carolina. Man, this is the hub of NASCAR, the hub of it. And I would see more moto gear on kids than I would see NASCAR gear on kids.
Wow.
All the time. All the time. You'd see kids in Fox racing gear or Thor or Alpine Stars or whatever it is, but it was moto-based. Not just the T-shirts of their favorite rider. I'm talking about moto gear, the jerseys and the hats and T-shirts for the companies that sponsor the sport.
Right.
That's what they were into because they were sponsoring them or they were using that equipment on their bikes.
Wow.
Whatever it was. Yeah, you don't get that in NASCAR. NASCAR, you get, I might have back in the day, you would have had it at the same time as when my kids were in school, you'd have had a Jimmy Johnson T-shirt or a Pocono T-shirt because you went to the race there. But you didn't have, necessarily a Goodyear Tire T-shirt on a kid,
Right. Well, that's interesting. How much split is it on asphalt to dirt with the bike crowds? Is it completely different, completely separate?
Yeah, the pavement stuff is not as big over here anymore. You're talking about road racing, like motorcycle road racing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've done all that too. MotoGP,
Big internationally, I know
the U.S. dominated MotoGP back in the 80s and early into the 90s. We won more world championships than any other country out there for quite a while. But now the pipeline of riders from the U.S. to becoming MotoGP stars pretty much ended with Nicky Hayden and then Ben Spies. So that we don't really have anybody right now. AMA motorcycle road racing went away. Moto America came along, and it just hasn't developed into a big deal the way AMA road racing was in its heyday when we were getting Kevin Schwantz and Freddie Spencer and Wayne Rady and Eddie Lawson. So those were the guys that won all the titles for us, and they stopped. And that ladder system ended after Nicky and Ben, and so did the World Championships, with Nicky winning the last one. And so there really hasn't been anybody from the U.S. to come along that's dragged fans with him, into watching them race in World Superbike or MotoGP level competition. Hopefully that changes at some point because it's great racing and there's a lot of people that love motorcycle road racing, but you see it at the dealerships too. You go to your local motorcycle dealership and you ask them, what are they selling the majority of? They're not selling bikes as much as they're selling, quads and UTVs and side-by-sides and all that sort of stuff. But if they are selling bikes, chances are if it's a two-wheel bike going out the door, it's probably a dirt bike.
Yeah. That's pretty...
They're cheaper.
Good.
Families can all do it together, so that's why it's easier if dad's going to talk mom and the family into doing something with him like that. It's easier for him to buy, 4 dirt bikes and outfit everybody and put them in a trailer and go spend the weekend together. Everybody can ride like that. You start riding sport bikes, it gets a little bit more intense.
Yeah, more dangerous, especially.
Yeah.
That is interesting how our market is segmented. We ain't had a international star for a while. It's like we're happy on our little little island. I think it's because we're so entertainment centric. You can get fame very quickly in America. I think that's why people come here too. You know, um, it just seems like you can get worldwide stardom just racing here. You don't have to go out and beat the world to do it.
Yeah, well, the two-wheeled attention. Look, if you're a kid who's 8, 9 years old and you like motorcycles, period. You just like motorcycles. And you're going, man, I want to get involved in this motorcycle world one way or another. And you start looking around on television, you see flat track isn't really doing anything like it used to in the 70s or the 80s. It's not really got a great TV package. It doesn't look very exciting anymore when it's on. You look at road racing, same kind of deal. You don't have big stars like you did back in the 80s and the 90s in the U.S., and they're not really running the big bikes anymore at places like Daytona, so it just doesn't have that pizzazz to it. But then Saturday night rolls along, and these bright lights at places like Anaheim and Texas Stadium in Arlington and Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Supercross comes into town, and it's Saturday night, and it's live on TV, and there's thousands of people in the grandstands, and there's opening ceremonies, looks like a Kiss show going on with lasers and fire and all this stuff, and these guys are flying through the air and big, exciting races and everything. Why would you care about road racing or flat track?
Right.
You're going to want to go there. You're racing in an NFL or Major League Baseball stadium on a Saturday night? You kidding me?
Right.
Who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah. It's almost the opposite of the four-wheel world. That's interesting
Yeah.
how the dirt
So-
segment is so much more popular in the two-wheel world than the asphalt could think of, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, that Supercross, they figured it out, the folks at Feld who promote that series.
That's Disney, correct?
No, it's not Disney. They produce shows that have Disney licensing, but they are not Disney. So they do Disney on Ice, and they do other Disney-related shows like that, these little traveling tours that go around the country, and they play various size venues, whether they're theaters or smaller, like hockey arenas, or big stadiums. They do Disney Live, they do Disney on Ice, they do a variety of different things. Depends on whatever Disney's pushing at the time. Like they had a lot of stuff with the Frozen series and all that. But then they also do Monster Jam as theirs. They used to do Ringling Brothers. That was under their banner. But Supercross was always a big deal for them.
Yeah. That's
So the interesting thing there is they're not really racing people. They're, they're butts and seats people, right? They look at a venue and they say, okay, they'll roll into a town like, Chicago or Charlotte. They'll come to Charlotte here and they'll say, okay, we got a hockey arena over here. It's a minor league hockey stadium that seats, 5,000 people. All right, put a Disney on Ice over there. And then, we got this Spectrum Center over here where the NBA team plays. We can put, 10, 15,000 in there. Okay, that's where we'll put the circus. Circus can go over there. And then you got the NFL stadium over here, Bank of America Stadium, where the Panthers play. That's 72,000. What do we do there? Oh, we can do Monster Jam. We can do Supercross in there a couple times a year. Perfect. That's what we'll do. So they'll come into a city and they'll bring 4 or 5 events in over the course of the year, all different shapes and sizes, but they'll use up all the different venues in the town.
wow. I wonder what they think of the Gateway show, the Dome. I wonder how they're looking at that, maybe potentially seeing how that's progressed.
Well, they race Supercross in that dome, so
Yeah.
they do quite well in there.
Yeah. Well, obviously they're in dirt in stadiums. They're seeing a dirt track event somewhat have success in a dome. Although I think it's very a once a year type of success. I'm not sure if it could have a traveling success. because you don't have the stars technically to do that outside of that one area. So organic, the racing stuff, you know.
Yeah, well, then there's a lot of things that, again, because moto is a lifestyle, there's a lot of things that come with. There's factory involvement now, right? All the major factories want to be a part of Supercross because they're getting right to their market
Right.
by putting these events on in these giant stadiums all around the country. You don't have that with four-wheel dirt racing.
Right. A lot of avenue streams, more so than just the butts in the seats, as far as
Yep.
support for the event. Okay.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of tentacles to all this stuff.
Okay. Well, I guess. Well, thanks for your time. Do you want to say anything else? Do you have any good dingus stories?
Oh my God.
Let's hear it. Come on now.
None that we can share here.
Oh, come on. What's the wildest night for Ralph Sheheen in Knoxville? It can't be that bad.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
And then censor it.
But no, I would just have to think back and see if I can remember some of the crazy. You know, I'll tell you some of the funny things, like going back to, you got me thinking about the Slick 50 deal, and my brain started remembering all the crazy stuff that happened during that deal. What's that?
Aliens?
Aliens? No aliens. But we had there was a country western bar that was right down the street from Manzanita, and we raced on Sunday, but of course everybody just stayed out there. You know, it's 10 Sundays in a row. So everybody pretty much just moved out the Phoenix area for the 3 months, because we would start racing in November around Thanksgiving, and we'd finish New Year's Eve weekend. So we would go to this place. The guy became a sponsor of our races over at Manzanita. They owned the country western bar, and he invited us all out there, and we all would go out and we'd check the place out. And it was a really pretty cool place. And then he decided one night, you know, they had one of those big dance floors, you know, where everybody would do their two-stepping and go around in a big circle in the bar, big, huge bar right in the center with this dance floor around it. So they decided one night they were going to have bar stool racing. These guys had these motorized bar stools.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And they got all of us on these bar stools. And I remember Lasowski's bar stool caught on fire, and I crashed with somebody. I don't remember who it was. I ended up with a big old scar on me from that bar stool race. I mean, it was a great time out there. But that was the kind of stuff that made it a lot of fun. And then every Sunday night after the races, everybody went to a place called Bobby McGee's, which was a popular restaurant bar on the West Coast. And there was one in Phoenix. And I don't know, I think the only reason why we ended up there is because it was the only place that was open on Sunday nights, where once we got done with the races, everybody could run over there and we get some food and have a couple of beers and have a good time. And man, that was so much fun. That was the dingus of the Slick 50 series, because everybody was there. And you'd walk in and you had guys from all over the country just hanging out, having a great time. And they ended up, you know, they would give us this big back room area, and because we were there every Sunday and spent a lot of money in there. So those were some wonderful times, everybody hanging out there. If you come across anybody that was a part of that deal back there and you say, hey, tell me about Bobby McGee's, everybody's going to get a big smile over that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Bobby McGee's. Okay.
Bobby McGee's and the dingus.
Yeah, Arizona needs a big sprint car winter series again, potentially.
Somewhere does. I'll tell you that. I'd love to be a part of that. That's something I would love to see happen again. That was a magical time for sure. And you know, sometimes you can't force that. It just happens. I mean, think about Knoxville. Here's this big, beautiful half mile of dirt in the middle of Iowa, town of what, 8,000?
It's not many.
Not many. And 40,000 fans every night in the middle of August.
Right.
In that place. And Why? Who knows? It just happened, right? Yeah, the dirt's spectacular, but it just happened. It just happened there. And now it's this very, very special, incredible facility and place. And, you know, to those of us that love this sport of sprint car racing, it is just, it's heaven on earth. It's a special place. And you just have to go experience it. You know, we can sit there and try to talk about it, but it's a feeling, it's a vibe, it's an aura that you get when you go there. And once you go there, you go, oh, okay, now I get it.
Right.
But is it one particular thing? No, it's a combination of all of it, right? So you can't manufacture it. A lot of times it just organically happens. It sure happened there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for calling in.
I don't know if we really answered anything here tonight. I know we were all over the board on everything.
Yeah,
which was a lot of fun, but I hope somebody enjoys their conversation.
Hey man, conversation sells now. Q&As are old, you know. Nobody's got time for Q&As.
Yeah, I don't know if they have time to sit through all of that what we talked about, but there's something in there somewhere.
There's someone driving their race hauler right now across the country somewhere, maybe even in Australia, and that this is what they're listening to.
Well, I hope so. I hope they're entertained by it. It was fun to chat with you about it, Chaz. So hopefully we get to do it again.
And Speed Sport 1 is where they can find Ralph Sheheen in 2025. That's where you are.
In 2026, buddy, that's the deal. Speed Sport 1, we're over 200 million active users a month. It's all free, 100% free, no subscription fee, no pay-per-view, none of that. You just tune in and watch. You can find us on Amazon Prime. We're on Sling. We're on the Roku channel. We're on a variety of places out there. If you have a connected device, which means your phone, your laptop, your iPad, or your TV, you can watch Speed Sport 1 for free and enjoy all the racing, live or taped.
What's y'all's next biggest event? What's the thing to look forward to next?
Well, we are the home of all things IHRA for 2026 and beyond. So if you like what's going on there with the IHRA, get ready. We're going to have a bunch of it. We'll have drag racing, boat racing, you name it. It's all coming.
Okay. All right.
A lot of great. We do all the IMCA stuff on there as well. So we got something for everybody.
Okay. All right, then. Is there a website people can go check that out? Or no?
Speedsport1.com or speedsport.com.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling. Sorry.
That's the numeral 1, not the word, the numeral 1.
Numeral 1. Okay. Well, thank you very much for calling in, and hopefully we'll see how it goes in the future with this free streaming platform. I think it's a great idea. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, oh no, it's been a nice success so far, and we're looking for bigger things here in 26.
All righty. Well,
come check us out.
Thank you for calling in there, Ralph.
You got it. Hope everybody has a great 2026, and I look forward to seeing everybody at the track.
Yes, sir. Happy New Year.
All right. Happy New Year, you too. Talk to you later.
Bye. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Ralph Sheheen. That was good. I mean, there was a lot of info in there, a lot of going into how different industries work and the TV and the streaming and all that. That was some interesting things, and then even some of the open wheel history. Let's see here. Comments. The Chaz is truly international. Wow, Chaz is big time. Thanks, Ralph and Chaz. Awesome show. Him and Johnny announcing the Knoxville Nationals would be awesome with Connor Wade. That sounds good. That sounds like a good idea. Arizona DOT. Down thumb emoji. Oh my. Hands down, tuning into a Saturday night Supercross race is an entertaining event. Okay. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that was the show live here with Ralph Sheheen. We do have some events coming up this week here on the show, so be sure to be subscribed to the channel so that you can see the episodes as they come out. We got Levi Jones, Michael Rigsby coming on here in the next week. A lot of people are, I guess it's probably New Year's that everybody's trying to take a few days off. But obviously you got High Limit still rolling. We'll have that eventual show tomorrow. kind of wrapping up the high limit at Perth. And then New Year's is Wednesday. We'll probably not be here for Wednesday, but regardless, thanks to Ralph Sheheen for tuning in, a literal National Sprint Car Hall of Famer with a lot of history in the sport. We all know who Ralph Sheheen is. Now we got how he thinks on some topics as well. That's some fun stuff to catch up on there with Mr. Sheheen there. And Speed Sport 1, free streaming. I like the idea. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, as always, be sure to subscribe. We will catch y'all next time.
And they growl about it, lonely like old bro Joe. Cartel gonna care for me, not you, cause I'm the CEO. I'm here to fight, looking to sink with my torpedo. I'm just a lap car trying to survive, running in the back, fearing my life. Cause there's a black 2041 guy adding to the junk in the field with some white on white crimes. Or is it 99 maybe? I don't give a damn, but the bank statements lately adding up through the junk that the crazy man's making. Reckon her, reckon him, non-binary maybe, who knows?